Welcome to this online service at City of Hope.
For the last 8 months, we've been preaching about Matthew 6, verse 33, that says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all of these things will be added." And over the last 5 or 6 weeks, we've just been spending time on the Sermon of the Mount and the Beatitudes, which is part of the kingdom message. So we've been stuck in Matthew 5, 6, and 7 for the most part of this year. And so today we were on a transition to Matthew chapter 8. Is it okay? Tell your neighbor we are graduating to Matthew chapter 8. And the message that comes with Matthew chapter 8 is a question that says, what is your assignment? What is my kingdom assignment? Because each one of us carries a kingdom assignment. We are not just here by chance, we are here by design. We are here by divine design, in fact. Each one of us are here on purpose and for a purpose. Like Queen Esther, where her uncle came to her and he said, "Listen, you were born for such a time as this." I want to speak and prophesy over your heart this morning that you were born for such a time and such a place as this. That you are alive in 2024 and you're living in the beautiful city of Kimberley in the wonderful country of South Africa by divine design and purpose. You were predestined to be right here, right now, before the foundations of the earth was laid. God meant for you to be here. God placed you here on purpose because you and I carry a divine assignment to do something for Jesus in this place. Each of us carries a kingdom assignment. You're not just here to make a living. You're here to make a difference. You're just here to make money, but to make a difference. Not here just to survive, but to thrive in the assignment God has for you. You know, somebody said, a man who lacks purpose will distract himself with pleasure. Somebody who lacks purpose will be tempted to distract himself with purpose. How many of you know that when we're not aligned to the assignment of God, it brings about frustration in our own hearts? Romans 8 teaches, Paul teaches, it says, you will be subject to frustration. He says we are subject to frustration until we are made manifest as God's sons and daughters. Is that right? Does it say that? What does it mean? To be a son or daughter of God means I fulfill the assignment of my Father on my life. Jesus says the Son only does what he sees the Father doing. In other words, the Son has embraced the assignment of his Father for his life, and that's how the frustration is removed. Frustration is a godly emotion. Frustration shows me I'm not in alignment with his assignment over my life. And so we're in a season where God is bringing alignment to his assignment so he can remove the frustration and manifest sons and daughters all across the world that will get on with his assignment for their life. And so God is just restoring a great sense of purpose within our hearts. And so in this passage of Scripture, Matthew chapter 8, and then over to chapter 9, I found 5 keys about our assignment. 5 keys. And in verse 19 of chapter 8, it says, "Now Jesus saw a crowd around him. He gave orders to go over to the other side." The assignment of your life will call you to cross over to the other side. Can you say with me, the other side? But you have to say it a little bit doomy and glooming. We have to cross over to say the other side. Now remember there was this radio program, The Other Side, en die ander kant. Can you remember that? It was on Pretoria, Radio Sonder Mense, sorry, not Radio Sonder Mense, Radio Jacaranda, where this lady was a medium and she would talk to the dead on behalf of people. It's strange. This is not that other side. But it was close to that. Because when Jesus said to Peter, James, John, and the disciples, listen to these Jewish boys, when he said, listen, cross over to the other side, the hair on their arms started to raise up. Because he was speaking about the country of the Gadaranes. Now the land of the Gadaranes at the time was the hub of witchcraft and satanic worship. It was the epicenter, it was the headquarters of all satanic worship and witch doctors and witches and wizards. And when Jesus said, cross over to the other side, these Jews, well, remember, a Jew cannot touch something unclean without having to go through ceremonial rituals and washing and cleaning afterwards. They don't touch anything. They don't touch a pig. They don't even look at a pig, because they have to be cleaned afterwards. So all their hair on their arms was standing up. Jesus calls us to go to the other side. Jesus calls you and I to cross over to the other side. You see, it's easy to stay in my comfort zone. It's easy to stay in my place of complacency and convenience. But you know what? Nothing happens. The assignment does not get fulfilled in my comfort zone. Driekus du Plessis, Driekus Stilnox du Plessis, okay, does not become a world champion in the comfort of his lazy boy, playing UFC on his Sony PlayStation, thumb warfare. What must he do? He has to train. He has to get out of his lazy boy, go to the gym, train for months and months, be fit, be in the right weight category. And then he needs to enter the octagon and has to war it out with another champion. And that's how he fulfills his assignment. Come on. The world champion Springbok, 2 times world champion, 4 times world champion, back-to-back time, 2 times world champion, does not win a World Cup by sitting on their lazy boy and playing Rugby World Cup on their Sony PlayStation. What do they need to do? They train for months and months. They war it out. And then they go to the Stade de France, where there's a hostile environment, where there's a hostile crowd, where everybody is booing them and rooting against them. And in the midst of all that adversity, outside of their comfort zone, far away from their lazy boy and their recliner and their comforter, it is there where victories are won. It is there where an assignment is fulfilled. And Jesus says to us, are you willing to cross over from your comfort zone and into your mission field? Because unless we stay in our comfort zone, unless we leave our comfort zone, that assignment will never be fulfilled in our lives. What is our assignment? Is to cross over to the other side. You see, a comfort zone is a dangerous place. There's a very small margin between my comfort zone and my death zone. Just ask the little frog that was placed on the casserole, on the oven, on the stove. You know, initially the water was cold and chilly and he was swimming around, and they started heating the water up and it became lukewarm and a little bit more comfortable. Eventually there were some bubbles coming out and it was like boiling. It's like a jacuzzi, and he was hanging on the sides of this casserole thinking he's the king of his jacuzzi. But because he was complacent in his comfort zone, he boiled to death and he never jumped out. Somebody once said the difference between a groove and a grave is only the depth. Don't let your groove become your grave. And Jesus is calling each one of us. He's saying, would you rise up and cross over out of your comfort zone and into your mission field? I've got an assignment for your life. I've got a plan and a purpose for you. I want you to live on purpose. Verse 24, it says, suddenly a violent storm. Can you say a violent storm? But can you say that violently? Say a violent storm. Okay, suddenly a violent storm came up on the sea, so that the boat was swamped by the waves, but Jesus was sleeping. There's so much contrast in this one verse. A violent storm, the boat is swamped by all the waves, and Jesus is sleeping. You see, the second thing I learn about our assignment is not only that we cross over to the other side, but Jesus calls us to face some of our storms and some of our fears. Whenever God's word says to you, cross over, there's going to be resistance. The Gospel of Mark's version of the same account says the moment they got in the boat, the winds and the waves were contrary. Because circumstances will always be contrary to what God is assigning you to do. How many of you can remember when God spoke to you about something to rectify, maybe in how you parent your children to be more disciplined, or maybe something in your marriage, or maybe He talked to you about tithing and you started tithing? How many of you know that the moment you start obeying an assignment of God, there's opposition? A storm break out over your finances. A storm break out over your family. You know? And then we want to question. We say, no, let me rather back down. No, there's not a time to back down. You have to overcome that storm. You have to overcome that fear. Because victory is only on the other side of overcoming. And Jesus is sleeping in his storm. Somebody once said, we only have authority over the storms in which we can sleep. We have authority and power over the storms that we can sleep in. You can remember a storm, I bet, that you faced a year ago or 2 years or 5 or 10 years ago. And back then, it gave you sleepless nights. Back then, you were freaked out about the same like the disciples. You were freaked out about the storm. I can remember many of them. But today, when I face the same storms, I can sleep in that storm. I'm no longer freaked out by that storm because I have gone and gained victory over that storm. Can you think of some storms like that? I remember our first house that we bought, a little townhouse, and when I did the budgeting, you'd appreciate this, Reenen. We were 3,000 rand short every month. I freaked out. I developed shingles, had to get medicine for my stress levels, you know. Since then, we've bought many properties, and our shortfall was much more, and we had to trust God for much bigger amounts with much less stress. Why? We can sleep in the storms that we gain victory over. Come on, child of God. There are some storms that no longer upset you. There are some fears that no longer make you anxious because you had already gained victory. But you are still going through another storm right now. You are still facing some anxiety or fear right now because Jesus is saying, I want to raise your capacity to sleep in your storm. I want to raise your capacity sometimes not to sleep in the storm, but to wake up in the storm and rebuke the storm. But Jesus is asleep. And maybe Jesus is asleep in your life. It's not that he is sleeping because God never sleeps nor slumbers. But your relationship with Jesus is a bit asleep. If you know what I'm talking about. You're not operating in the identity and the authority of Christ on the inside of you. And so Jesus is not deterred by the storm. That's why he's sleeping inside of your heart. But you are trying to bucket water and face the storm all by yourself. And Jesus is saying, just let God arise on the inside and all his enemies will be scattered. Jesus is saying to you, for this purpose was the Son of God manifest to destroy all the works of the evil one. Let Jesus arise in his authority and identity on the inside, and you have the authority to rebuke the winds and the waves. But the assignment on your life calls us to cross over to the other side. It calls us to face some storms and some fears. Verse 26, and Jesus said to them, why are you afraid, you men of little faith? Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the sea, and it became perfectly calm. Can you just say perfectly calm? God is going to bring you into a space where even in the midst of the storm, you can have perfect calmness. Verse 28, when Jesus arrived at the other side, can you say the other side? That other side that they dreaded, that other side that gave them goosebumps. When Jesus arrived, who arrives on the other side? Jesus. When Jesus arrives on the other side, in the region of the Gadaranes, 2 demon-possessed men coming out from the tombs met him. They were so violent. Can you just say that word again? Violent. They were so violent that none of them could pass that way. Why was the storm so violent earlier? The storm was so violent because these guys were assigned to carry the presence of Jesus into a territory where there was a violent, demon-possessed strong man over that whole region. And so the resistance on their lives was violent, but they had to break through their fears of the violent storm so that Jesus can deliver these violent men. Wow. Now just imagine. Number 3, Jesus assigns us, he calls us to set hearts, homes, and cities free. Jesus calls you and I, my friend, wherever we go, to set people's hearts free, to set homes free. And he's calling us to set our city free. Picture this with me. Jesus calls the 12 to get in a boat. And this is the assignment to them. He says, you carry my presence from here to Gadaranes, to the other side. Because as you carry my presence, something is going to happen on the other side if my presence sets foot on land. But in the process, they're facing resistance. In the process, they're facing a violent storm. In the process, they had to face their fears. They want to resist Jesus being transported to the other side, because Satan and all the demons in hell knows that when Jesus set foot on land in Gadarenes, he's going to set a heart free, he's going to set a home free, and he's going to set those cities free. Wow. And that's why the same violence that was in these men, they met in that storm. Now think about this. Do you think, if Gadarenes was the hub of witchcraft and demonic activity and satanic worship, do you think spiritually it was a charged atmosphere, demonically? Must have been, like crazy. These two men were so powerful in the spiritual realm, that they controlled the whole region of Gadarenes. It says nobody could enter or exit if these two men did not permit it. These two men controlled a demon-infested region. And yet, when the disciples fulfilled their assignment to carry the presence of Jesus from their comfort zone to the other side, when Jesus set foot on land, when he landed, the Bible said, these two demon-possessed men came running, falling at the feet of Jesus, and the demons begged for mercy. You see, when a strong man falls to his knees, he's surrendering to a stronger man. And Jesus is calling you and I. He's giving us an assignment as City of Hope. He's giving not only us, but the whole church of Kimberley. He's giving us an assignment even in this time as we're approaching the Jesus Week. He's saying, would you be the vessel? Would you be the company of people that carries my presence into your city, into the schools, into the university, into every business, into every retail store, into every government department, into every courtroom, into every police station, into every sphere of society? Carry my presence. You will face some storms. You're going to face some fears. Everything that you're afraid of is going to manifest. But if you can hold on, if you can stay to it, if you can complete your assignment, then I'm going to become the new strong man in Kimberley. I'm going to become the new strong man in your department of government. I'm going to become the new strong man in your school. I'm going to become the new strong man in the university. I'm going to become the new strong man in every store, in every business, in every house, in every heart, in every home. But would you carry me? Would you pay the price? Would you leave your comfort zone? It says in verse 34, and behold, all the city came out to meet Jesus when they saw the demon-possessed men delivered. The whole city was led to Jesus when these two strong men was delivered. Friends, we're going to see our entire city being led to Jesus. I believe this with all my heart. I believe come Jesus Week, and it's starting now already, people are getting saved. People that we thought was unsavable are getting saved. People that we deemed previously untouchable are getting touched by the goodness. People that we deem are unhealable are getting healed by God. God is doing things that are impossible. And when God begins to heal the unhealable, touch the untouchable, save the unsavable, then the city will come out and say, who is this man? Who is this Jesus? We need to meet him. Because Jesus is becoming the strong man in our midst. Wow. And so chapter 9, we're going over to chapter 9, verse 1 and 2. Jesus stepped into the boat and crossed over. That's now he crossed over again, a second time, and came to his own hometown. How many of you know that Jesus many times could not do mighty miracles in his own hometown? It says Jesus could do no mighty miracles in Nazareth because people were familiar with him. You see, familiarity breeds contempt. And so Jesus at many times couldn't do mighty miracles Because people in his own town that saw him grew up said, oh, this is just Jesus, we know him. They had no expectation for God to do something greater. And friends, may this never be written about us at City of Hope and about us in Kimberley, that we missed the visitation of God because we were too familiar with the things of God, because we were too familiar maybe with one another and say, no, this is someone named Reggie or this is someone named Pastor Jana. No, it's not about that. It's about God visiting our town, our city. But here, a miracle happens. Here is an instant where in his hometown, Jesus is doing a mighty miracle. And let's see why. He went over to the other side or crossed over to his own hometown. Some people brought to him a paralyzed man on a mat, seeing their faith, seeing their expectation. Jesus said to the paralyzed man, be encouraged, my child, your sins are forgiven. Number 4, the fourth part of our assignment is to carry the lame to Jesus. Part of our assignment is to carry the presence of Jesus into our city and into our business world and into whatever space we are working in. The second part of our assignment is some people we need to carry into the presence of Jesus. Because some are so maimed and lamed by life that they can never carry themselves into the presence of Jesus. Some people, maybe they suffered the trauma of a divorce or other trauma or a loss of a loved one or a bankruptcy. Maybe somebody got offended in church and they carry so much hurt and bitterness and they confused and disillusioned. They can never walk themselves into church. They are lame. Emotionally they are lame. Mentally they are lame. They cannot walk themselves into the house where Jesus is meeting. But you and I can be their friends. And when Jesus saw their faith, when Jesus saw they had faith that he could heal the unhealable, when Jesus saw they had expectation that he could touch the untouchable, Jesus said, on account of their faith, this man will be made well. I believe we're living in a season where we live on holy ground like never before. And God is saying, all I need from you is a little bit of faith. All I need from you is a little bit of expectation. Just write down 5 names. Just begin to carry people through prayer and through invitation and through reaching. Just begin to carry people into my presence and you will see. Some people that you say, no, that person can't be saved. He's so hardened. She said, don't underestimate God. God says, I will honor your faith. If you believe me, I will honor your faith. So we carried and we called to carry the lame into the presence of Jesus. Matthew 9 verse 6 says, Jesus turned to the paralyzed man and said, stand up, pick up your mat, and go home. Last part of our assignment. Perhaps the first part of our assignment, I don't know. But we are called to stand up, to own up, and to show up. He says to the layman, he says, stand up. Stand up out of your depression. Stand up out of your anxiety. Stand up out of that which kept you lame and maimed for many years. And then he says, take up. Jesus says, take up your bed. Take up responsibility for your life. Take up ownership of your life. Last Sunday we spoke about how when we forgive other people, we're taking back the power of happiness to ourselves. You see, when we stay resentful, how many of you battled with offense this week? Let me just see if it was not only me. Come on, after we preached that beautiful sermon last Sunday. I promise you, I think it was on Friday morning, I have one day, maybe in 6 months, where I really feel sorry for myself. I'm going to just be honest with you as a pastor. Do you ever feel, Keith, do you ever feel sorry for yourself? Okay? Reenen, voel hy partykeer sy jammer vir homself. Just a few, baie, okay. Come on, as your pastor, I'm going to be honest with you. There are days when I feel sorry. I don't allow myself many days to feel sorry for myself. But maybe once in 6 months I have a bad day. On Friday I had a bad day, even preparing this sermon, and God spoke to me. Oh, my soul. It's bad if you preach first to yourself and then to the congregation, right? You see, because when I have a pity party and I feel sorry for myself, I'm not owning my own happiness. I'm blaming maybe somebody else, or I'm blaming circumstances. And God is saying to this lame man, He says, no, you stand up. Stand up out of your situation. Own up your life. Take ownership. Take your bed. Take it up. Take up your ownership and responsibility, not only for your life, but for your assignment. And then He says, go home. What does go home mean? It means to show up. For many years, this lame man did not show up at home. I don't know if he had children, but his children needed him and he wasn't there. He couldn't hold a job because he was lame. He didn't show up at work. He didn't make a significant contribution to society by working industriously. And Jesus said to him, go home. Show up for the people that you love. Show up for the people that care about you. Show up for your children. Show up for your spouse. Show up for your community. Show up at work. Show up at business and do your part. And Jesus is saying, you've got an assignment this morning. And the frustration that you and I believe will never leave until there's an alignment with His assignment. Such a powerful invitation through this word this morning. And it's really summed up by these last words of Jesus where He says, stand up, own up, and show up.